Ladies and gentlemen, before you say I do, before you walk down that aisle, before you tie your destiny to another soul, stop, because what I'm about to tell you is not just advice, it is a prophetic warning. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity. It's about saving you from a life of silent suffering behind a perfect Instagram photo. It's about uncovering the truth behind love, partnership, and the spiritual cost of marrying the wrong person. I'm not here to sugarcoat, I'm here to shake your spirit awake, because marriage is not just romance, rings, and roses, it's warfare, it's alignment, it's purpose. And if you miss the warning signs, if you ignore what your soul is trying to tell you, you might lose yourself in the name of love. So before you marry, hear this. Let this message interrupt your plans to protect your purpose. Marriage magnifies who you already are, not fixes what's broken. This is one of the most misunderstood truths when it comes to relationships. Many people walk into marriage thinking that love will be the healing balm for all their insecurities, all their unresolved trauma, all their emotional baggage. They believe that by merging their life with someone else, they will automatically feel whole. But marriage doesn't make you whole, it reveals whether or not you already are. What you carry into that union, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, will only be amplified. It will echo louder in the halls of your shared life, not disappear. If you struggle with insecurity while you're single, those insecurities will not only follow you into marriage, they will multiply. If you battle with trust issues now, marriage won't erase them, it will test them daily. If you lack identity and depend on others for validation, a partner won't fix that. They'll either get exhausted trying to fill the void or unintentionally deepen it. People expect marriage to be a destination that solves everything, but it's actually a mirror that reflects back everything you've tried to hide from yourself. And the person standing across from you, no matter how loving, cannot fight battles that were never theirs to begin with. This is why preparation before marriage is more important than the ceremony itself. Working on your emotional health, addressing your childhood wounds, healing from past relationships, learning how to communicate without defensiveness, establishing your purpose, and knowing your worth, these are the foundational blocks that make a marriage work. Because when two whole people come together, they complement each other. But when two broken people collide, they bleed on each other. And no amount of love can thrive in a relationship constantly drained by unresolved pain. Most people enter marriage hoping that their partner will become a permanent emotional caretaker. But when you make someone responsible for your happiness, your peace, your identity, you create an unhealthy dependency. You begin to confuse love with control, validation with affection, comfort with calling. You'll expect them to know when you're hurting without you saying a word, to constantly reassure you of your value, to adjust themselves so you don't have to grow. That isn't love, that's bondage disguised as intimacy. You must ask yourself, do I want a partner or a savior? Because if you're waiting for someone to rescue you from your own emptiness, you'll forever be disappointed. True love enhances what's already inside of you, it doesn't install it. And if you can't sit with yourself in stillness, how will you survive the silence of marriage when it's no longer about excitement but endurance? There's nothing wrong with wanting companionship. There's nothing wrong with desiring marriage. But if the foundation of that desire is fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of missing out, then what you're building isn't a marriage, it's a shelter for your insecurities. And sooner or later, that shelter will collapse. You have to become the person you want to be married to. You have to heal from the inside out. You have to stop believing that someone else's love is the medicine for your wounds. Healing is your responsibility. Wholeness is your preparation. Marriage is not a magic wand. It's not a therapy session. It's not an escape from yourself. If you are impatient, marriage will test your patience. If you are controlling, marriage will frustrate your expectations. If you are unfaithful to your own values, marriage will expose your inconsistencies. It's not that marriage changes you, it reveals who you truly are when you're no longer hiding. When the masks come off, when life gets hard, when the pressure builds, when love is tested through pain, disappointment, and unmet expectations, that's when your character is revealed, not created. Your partner is a prophecy to your future. Choose them wisely. The person you marry is not just someone you fall in love with, they are someone you align your destiny with. Their mindset, their habits, their values, their faith, their discipline, their trauma, their vision, all of it becomes a part of your life narrative. Every decision they make will echo into your future. Every flaw they refuse to heal will bleed into your peace. Every strength they nurture will either lift you or outgrow you. You're not just choosing a spouse, you're choosing your next 10, 20, 40 years. You're choosing how you'll think, feel, parent, pray, fight, rest, grow, or decay. Most people fall for chemistry and ignore character. They get caught in how a person makes them feel rather than paying attention to how that person lives. But emotions fade and patterns remain. You can't build a future on butterflies. You need substance. You need someone whose life is not just compatible with yours, but capable of stewarding the weight of purpose. If your vision is global and their mindset is small, your relationship will shrink your potential. If your calling requires discipline and they're driven by impulse, you'll constantly be dragged into chaos. The wrong partner doesn't just slow you down, they reroute your destiny. So many people are gifted, talented, driven, but they tie their lives to people who don't understand where they're headed, and instead of soaring, they spend years trying to drag someone who was never meant to go with them. You can't force someone to become what they're not ready to be. You can't beg someone to grow, to heal, to see what you see, and if you attach yourself too tightly to someone unwilling to evolve, you'll either compromise your calling or resent your relationship. This is why discernment is critical. You need to pray with your eyes open. Watch how they handle pressure. Observe how they treat people who can do nothing for them. Pay attention to their relationship with truth. Do they lie when it's convenient? Do they deflect responsibility? Do they silence uncomfortable conversations? The person you're dating today is the seed version of who they'll be in marriage. And if the seed is unhealthy, marriage won't fix it, it will water it. Whatever is in them now will grow. You must also evaluate your own heart. Are you choosing this person from a place of wisdom or from a place of loneliness? Are you falling in love with their potential or their patterns? Are you settling because of pressure or fear that someone better won't come along? These questions are uncomfortable but necessary, because when the emotional high fades, you'll be left with the reality of who you chose. And no amount of regret can undo years tied to someone who was never aligned with your purpose. The future is not just about dreams, it's about alignment. Two people walking in the same direction, sharing values, sharpening each other, holding each other accountable, loving each other in truth, building something that matters, that is marriage. Not convenience, not lust, not fantasy, but covenant. And that covenant will either position you to thrive or bind you in warfare you were never meant to fight. The person you choose becomes a part of your spiritual covering. Their words will influence your thoughts. Their habits will influence your environment. Their wounds will affect your atmosphere. Marriage doesn't isolate problems, it multiplies them. And if you're not spiritually and emotionally in sync, you will spend more time surviving than building. Your peace is not just found in the presence of love, but in the presence of alignment. Peace comes when your life flows in the same direction, when your spirits are not just attracted, but assigned a ring won't silence red flags your spirit already noticed. Too many people enter marriage thinking commitment will calm the chaos they ignored during dating. They assume that vows, ceremonies, and shared homes will somehow transform dysfunction into peace. But what you tolerated while dating will not vanish with a ring, it will intensify. The warning signs you brushed aside, the uneasy feelings you buried, the habits you tried to justify, all of it will grow louder when you're locked into a life together with no escape route that feels easy. Your spirit knows when something is off. It knows when words don't match actions, when affection is inconsistent, when presence feels heavy instead of healing. But we live in a culture that teaches people to silence their intuition in the name of love. To confuse loyalty with blindness, to accept red flags as quirks, to normalize emotional chaos, and in the process, people override their inner warnings because they're afraid to start over, afraid to be alone, afraid to lose what they've convinced themselves is love. Red flags aren't always loud. Sometimes they show up in the form of dismissiveness, when your needs are constantly minimized. Sometimes they're disguised in jokes that sting, patterns of control disguised as protection, or inconsistencies that always have an excuse. You hear them speak about others with disdain, and you think they won't one day speak about you the same way. You watch them mishandle conflict with silence, with shouting, with blame, and you believe marriage will teach them how to communicate better. It won't. It will only expose what they never learned. We don't just marry who someone is. We marry their patterns, and if their pattern is avoidance, their ring won't make them confront truth. If their pattern is manipulation, a vow won't make them transparent. If their pattern is emotional unavailability, a wedding won't create intimacy. People assume love will change someone, but love doesn't change people. Commitment to growth does. And if they haven't committed to growing before marriage, don't expect that ceremony to birth maturity. You are not difficult for having standards. You are not wrong for asking hard questions. You are not too much for needing consistency. If you feel uneasy before the marriage, trust that. If your peace disappears around them, take that seriously. If you have to shrink yourself, silence yourself, or constantly fix yourself just to make it work, you are already losing yourself before the real test begins. Marriage doesn't solve identity issues, it reveals them. And if you're marrying someone who only loves you in parts, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to earn full acceptance from someone who was never capable of giving it. Many people want to wear the title of spouse, but aren't ready for the responsibility of covenant. They want the Instagram moments, the honeymoon, the admiration, but not the accountability, the healing, the sacrifice. So you must ask yourself, what am I trying to cover with this ring? Is this love or is it fear? Is this peace or is it pressure? Am I listening to my soul or ignoring it out of desperation? There's a reason why something in you hesitates when you're around them. There's a reason you feel a knot in your stomach after certain conversations. That isn't drama, that's discernment. You don't have to justify dysfunction just because you've invested time. You don't have to stay on a path that leads to destruction simply because you're afraid of turning around. The red flags you see now are the battles you'll fight daily once you marry. And no ring can cancel out the consequences of what you refuse to confront. Waiting on divine timing is wiser than rushing into emotional traps. In a world that glorifies instant gratification and pressure-driven timelines, it's easy to believe that if you don't act fast, you'll miss your chance at love. People around you may be getting married, posting romantic milestones and celebrating anniversaries, and somewhere in your heart, you begin to feel like you're behind. That impatience becomes a breeding ground for compromise, causing you to ignore your standards and settle for what looks good, rather than what is truly aligned with your purpose. But divine timing doesn't operate on human schedules. It's not about when others think you should be married. It's about when your soul is ready to carry the weight of covenant. It's not about being chosen quickly. It's about being joined rightly. There are things God still wants to work out in you before you enter that kind of union. There are wounds that need healing, lessons that need learning, and wisdom that needs developing. Rushing into marriage out of emotional hunger leads to bonds built on brokenness rather than wholeness. And what begins as an escape from loneliness can turn into a lifetime of silent suffering. The right timing will always bring the right clarity. When you wait on divine timing, you don't just gain a spouse, you gain vision. You begin to see people for who they truly are, not who you desperately want them to be. You're able to observe instead of obsess. You can evaluate their character without being blinded by your own unmet needs. You are no longer caught up in the idea of marriage, but in the reality of what it demands. Divine timing removes the fog of fantasy and replaces it with the light of discernment. Many emotional traps disguise themselves as answered prayers. They come dressed in charm, wrapped in affection, and echoing the language of love. But underneath, they carry manipulation, spiritual misalignment, emotional immaturity, or hidden brokenness. When you move before your time, you begin to build with someone who might not have the capacity to love you properly, and no matter how good their intentions are, Love without capacity turns into resentment. You begin to feel like you're asking for too much when in reality, you're simply asking the wrong person. Time is a filter. It reveals consistency, exposes patterns, and reveals whether love is rooted in lust, loneliness, or true compatibility. But when you rush, you skip the filter and dive into illusion. You commit to a person before you understand their triggers, their values, their coping mechanisms, their emotional maturity, and their spiritual health. You make lifelong decisions based on momentary emotions, only to discover too late that you were never aligned in the first place. Divine timing teaches patience, but it also builds strength. It builds confidence in who you are without needing someone to complete you. It teaches you how to love yourself deeply, so you never settle for someone who only offers fragments of love. It sharpens your intuition, develops your faith, and makes space for God to remove the wrong people before they can attach to your destiny. When you rush, you try to play God. When you wait, you allow God to author your love story in a way that protects your peace, your purpose, and your heart. You don't need to prove anything to anyone by getting married quickly. Marriage is not a trophy, it's a calling. It requires two people who are not just in love but in alignment. Two people who understand sacrifice, communication, spiritual warfare, and shared destiny. If you're not ready, or if the person is not ready, no amount of pressure, chemistry, or attraction can substitute for what time and maturity build. There is beauty in waiting, there is strength in trusting, and there is peace in knowing that what is meant for you will never require you to rush, beg, or lose yourself to receive it.